EG and Dignitas will be playing for the 2021 summer playoffs over in the upper bracket. And this is probably one of the most one-sided brackets out of anything. And pretty much everyone is assuming that EG is going to win. I don't think there's going to be any analysts worth their salt that would vote against Evil Geniuses other than just to look fucking, like a contrarian. So now it's to discuss maybe why Dignitas will not win. And I think it's because, more particularly in this matchup, I think they have just a very weak bot lane, just in general, but also just matching against Evil Genius's bot lane of both Danny, who is looking really fucking good, and then Ignar, who is actually matching very well with Danny and maybe his aggression. I think that's one of the biggest reasons as to why Dignitas is going to lose, because there's a very big disconnect when in terms of Neo versus Afromu. And we could look at the game against Immortals in Friday, week 8, to where it was basically Neo just kept getting chunked out over and over again, and it was very, very bad. So you have that aspect, and he was getting chunked out by LeBlanc constantly. And then also, I think that Acadian himself is just a little bit desynced from the entire team. And that's somewhat to be expected, right? Because he replaced Dardoch, in like the middle of the split. And so he's had a very limited amount of time in order to get coordinated with the rest of his team. But, I mean, not only that, if you just look at, that week 8 game against Immortals, he was pretty desynced because at 27-15, if you go back and watch the VOD, he just completely turns away from his entire team as they're fighting for like mid control. And it's clear that, Immortals Revenge, the top laner, wants to go in against Dignitas. And so once they notice that Acadian isn't near them, he's actually like using his Kane Ghost, to go through the walls and shit. He's going through the walls to gain HP and whatnot, and also to go down to the bottom wave to try and push it back up because it's running into their tier 2 turret. And at that time, that's when Immortals pounce, and it's just like, well, first of all, Acadian wasn't even that low of HP. And second, it's why wasn't that even communicated that was the plan that he was going for, and so for the rest of Dignitas to pull back. So just very discombobulated team, and they don't have great synergy with Acadian, which is another big reason why I think that they will lose. But also, they got completely wrecked by TL in week 8, even though they had a better lane matchup with Callista, which is very strange to think that, okay, like, you can't really lose a lane with Callista, but they completely got destroyed at the very beginning portions of the game against Aphelios. But then, of course, that was rebutted through a couple different Yasuo plays that Yusui ended up going down bot to help them kind of win the game overall. But now what I want to say is, what can Dignitas actually do to win this game? Because, I mean, we all know how EG plays and how EG generally wins the game, but how can Dignitas have any way to even remotely win this fucking game? And I struggle to find a lot of solutions, but one of the obvious ones is they have to figure out how to, I guess, pray to the gods that Jizuke just has one of his int games, right? To where he's a little bit too over aggressive. He goes in when he shouldn't, and he's just completely aggro. And EG have obviously figured out how to play away from Jizuke in terms of the mid game, and that, he can split push, and then if more people go for him, it's a 2v1 over in like the bot lane or something, right? Then obviously EG knows to make a play on the other side of the map to get Herald or to contest Baron or, whatnot, or get a different tower. So this is like clearly their play style, and also the fact that they have the advantage of having 2 junglers, right? So they can always change it up in the middle of a series, which is something that Dignitas can't afford to do. And this brings me back to the whole idea of back in the day with Cloud9 of Sven and Blabber, and the fact that I think EG are actually using this in a similar way, in the sense that Contracts is actually the more aggressive of the two. And funnily enough, I called Contracts he was Blabber before Blabber was Blabber. So like he is like the quintessential guy before, who was a little bit brash. He would go in just unabrasive, or more so abrasive, and he would go for plays that no one should really be trying to do, not to the degree that Blabber had done, but he would go in that same vein, and you could see that in his play style. And I feel like Contract still has a little bit of that mojo back within that, and I think that's how EG are actually using these two. And the fact that you can see that it's not that they're testing out a guy for the top spot. It's the fact that they're alternating against them. And you can see that they have a particular game plan when they play these two different junglers. And the fact that it seems like Svenskeren is more capable of playing in a playstyle to where Jizuke is separated from the team. So that means that he's split pushing on a pick like Rise or like TF. Although Contracts has played with Twisted Fate, with Jizuke on the team. But I still think that Svenskeren is a little bit more comfortable with the macro type aspect, whereas Contracts is more comfortable with the micro type aspect, with team fights and how to zone and how to coordinate all those things. So how do Dignitas win secondarily, besides Jizuke inting, is, well, I think first of all, I think you need to ban Rise and you need to ban Twisted Fate, because a lot of teams they have huge difficulties fighting against Jizuke when he's split pushing and when he's drawing different pressure across the map. Because, as I said, and I keep touting this, is that I don't think North American teams know how to split push. And EG, they know how to actually split push. They've figured out the secret sauce of just like, let Jizuke do what he's going to do, and we have to coordinate off of his power, off of his play, which is actually, ironically, the thing that you have to do if you're going to play a split push comp. Is you don't play off the power of the 4, you play off the power of the 1. And if that 1 has more power than, in the 1v1, then obviously that's going to work in your advantage, because at some point they have to bring 2 people down in order to deal with Jizuke, because he's usually going to stomp the other person in terms of a 1v1. So there's that aspect, and also TF too. They should ban that. But I think they had a general good response, Dignitas did, against Team Liquid, and the fact that they used Yasuo into Rise, which is a kind of a nice counter, as far as I'm aware, at least theoretically in my mind. I'm thinking that Yasuo does quite well into Rise for like the majority of the game. Into the side lane and whatnot, to where Rise can actually side lane against Yasuo, one of the few picks that he can't do that. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe if you do have to leave Rise open, which you may have to, because there's a lot of other power picks on the Rift right now, so you might have to do that. And if you do, then you could pick the Yasuo instead. Another thing is that I think there's a problem that I don't think Acadian can out-jungle either of these junglers. I think he is either not aggressive enough, or he's not pathing correctly in terms of what he wants to get across the map. Because if you look in just the past history of the games of Dignitas themselves, what they don't do well enough is get Herald objective. And what you can see is that with Evil Geniuses, the reason why they're such a good team is they're able to limit, or rather, they are able to freely rotate around the map in terms of Jizuke's positioning, and that he could go to different side lanes, especially considering that his bot lane often wins very early on. So then they end up taking their tower or swapping lanes with Impact. And so that often leads to a tower advantage or a lane advantage for Evil Geniuses. And that's exactly what you don't want to happen, because then that enables Jizuke across the map. It doesn't matter if Jizuke is winning or losing his mid lane. Oftentimes he really isn't hard stopping mid lane. It's the fact that he's able to get advantages across the map to then it opens up the map even further because he's helped another lane, win their matchup or whatnot. And so I think one of the ways that Dignitas can actually win this game is by prioritizing Rift Herald. So if you look at the Herald control of Evil Geniuses, it's at 61% versus Dignitas is at 51%. Now, I know a lot of these numbers are a little bit fudged because of Dardoch in the very beginning, and then, you have Acadian at the end. So it's a little bit wonky, but I don't think that Dignitas actually prioritize Herald a lot, even still with Acadian. And with that said, I think this will actually give them an advantage because, first of all, I think Evil Geniuses it's just going to stomp the bot lane anyway, so they're going to have Dragon priority. And maybe you might want to mitigate that with banning something like a Callista, but I think you should still try and prioritize the Herald fight. So that means that you have to have a pushing mid lane, and hopefully you can do that against Jizuke. And then you need to have a pretty stable top lane. And I think Dignitas could actually do this. I think this is their best chance of actually winning the entire game is that if you get Herald, that means then you can get plates on, one lane or another. I suggest not bot lane because it's just not worth it because I just don't think they're going to be in a position to even use the Herald to get plates in bot lane anyways. And I think that both Contracts and Svenskeren are going to take advantage of the bot lane advantage anyways. I think Evil Geniuses already knows that their bot lane is very strong, and they're probably going to try and play towards that. But with that, you can counterbalance with, priority picks in mid lane especially, which then should help you get over into your top lane advantage too, because Jizuke helps the top lane oftentimes. So as long as Yusui is able to get advantage in the mid lane, I think they should have control over Herald. And then once you get control of Herald, you can try and snowball either mid lane, which I probably recommend because they're going to have to match Jizuke in the side lane anyways, which I don't think Jizuke can do as far as skill-wise. But if he has the right champion matchup and things are going well for him, he's got some plate money or whatnot, I think he can actually do it. So that's what Dignitas are going to have to bank on is just the Rift Herald plays themselves. I expect a lot of Rift Herald contests during this game and priority picks for the mid lane against Jizuke and banning out Jizuke's side lane champions and whatnot. But overall, I think this game is going to be a 3-0 anyways. I think Evil Geniuses is going to take it. As much as I say the opportunities or the plays that Dignitas have to do in order to win the game, I think it's a little bit of an impossible task. I don't think that they have it in them. I don't think that Acadian can necessarily out-jungle both Contracts or Svenskeren, in fact, either of them. And I don't think that with the ban phase it's going to be enough because they're going to have to give up some other picks within the jungle in terms of if they ban Twisted Fate or Rise. And also it's the idea maybe too that if they try and get maybe the counter pick in mid lane or whatnot, that also means that they're going to have to take red side, which then means, well, if they ban fucking Twisted Fate or Rise, and then maybe they have to leave open Xing Zhao, right? So then now Evil Geniuses gets that, which is a very bad thing. Or they don't ban Diana or something. So which obviously Contracts is very potent on Diana, so you don't want to give them that. So I really think Dignitas are really in a tough spot, so I don't see how they're going to actually win this game, even though I outlined the things that they can win by, and hopefully, if they do win, that's the reason why, but I don't think it's actually likely.